Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the third installment of the Personal Transformation Experience podcast. I'm your host or co-host, depending on which way you're looking at the situation. My name is David Brand.
My name is Maureen Brand, and we're not actually live. We're recording this, so we'll fix it when we're done. Did
I say we were live?
Yes.
I didn't even realize I said that.
Yes, you did.
Interesting. Well, thank you for pointing that out. We love to do this. We've been having conversations for the whole 15 years that we've been together, sharing stories and books and learnings with each other. And we've been learning and experiencing a lot together in the process of raising 3 children who are now young adults, 2 of whom have high functioning autism. It has been a fun ride. And one day we were out walking and we said, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we just kind of brought other people into the conversation with us? Not necessarily participant, but be able to kind of tune in to what we were talking about. Because we feel like we benefit from what others talk about and share. So we thought, why not put ourselves out there too? So here we are.
Yes, here we are. And today, the final interview, or finally the interview that we've been anticipating with my husband. I've created some really good questions. And so I'm excited because, you know, they're just not questions I get to ask him every day. So it's kind of fun to interview your spouse, to ask him questions that you wouldn't typically ask him throughout your day or at any time, really. I mean, these things might come up in conversation, but it's a fun activity to do with your spouse if you want. I mean, you don't necessarily have to record it like we are, but it's a great way to get information that you don't really have. I mean, you could know I've known him for 15 years and there's still things that I don't really know. So here we go.
Now, I don't know that I would necessarily agree that interviewing your spouse is fun because I've never either interviewed a spouse or been on the
fun
other
for
side
me.
So yeah, maybe it's going to be for at least one of us. So we'll see, because I have no idea what questions you're going to ask. I wasn't prepared ahead of time. So
right. I didn't share my questions with him.
This will be interesting. So I guess we'll just go ahead and get started and we'll go from there.
Yeah. I mean, you're pretty used to being interviewed. So you've been interviewed before about your field of work, not personally.
That's true. Yeah, I've been on many different podcasts.
So you're a veteran, babe.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
We'll see about
I
that.
Personally don't like answering questions about myself, so this is great for me. Okay.
Okay. Well, we will get to turn those tables at some point
I don't
in the
know.
future. So I wouldn't think this is going to be a one-sided affair. At least not. We'll come back to that. But go ahead and do what you got to do.
I'm going to interview my husband. So my first question for you is, what motivates you?
Now, I think it's a great question, and I do ask people that question when I'm trying to learn and get to know a bit more about them. What motivates me is growth. I know it's going to sound like a cliche, but personally being able to, and it's kind of what this podcast is about too, but personally being able to take myself from either a current state I'm in to a desired future state. And being able to learn and learn from others and read and just every day to just kind of work on being the best version of myself, but then extending that out to, if they want to, right, supporting and helping others who have that same desire as well. I do get a real kick out of seeing people do things that they either didn't think were possible or became successful. You know, I'll just give an example of somebody who worked for me a while back, and they were in a sales role and were underperforming, and they went from being the bottom of the pack in their group to the top. And they attributed that to the questions I asked them, the encouragement I gave them, the things I directed them to. And knowing that somebody felt that I made a positive impact on their life and their personal growth and help them be better at what they did and actually have more money to enjoy life, I think that motivates me. If I can see somebody take on a new challenge and succeed, And if that's me, if that's you, if that's our kids or somebody I work with, that motivates me. And every day I get up and say, what kind of growth can I see in others? What kind of growth can I achieve in myself?
So I'm hearing you say that what motivates you most is other people's growth.
And my own.
And your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started off by talking about how I get excited first about
Information,
my own possibilities.
Right.
My own possibilities, right? What can I do better, or what can I do differently today?
Okay. So what do you do to keep yourself motivated? Like, are there any times where you just feel like, oh my God, I think I just want to stay in bed today? Like, how do you keep yourself with that growth mindset?
Yeah, and that's great. That is what I call it. We talk about that a lot at work. And I think there's some authors that we've read together to talk about growth mindset.
Yeah.
Because it isn't always about how smart you are, right? But it's that ability to believe that your mind is able to be expanded, right? And what you're able to accomplish in life is always able to be expanded. Nothing's infinite. We don't reach plateaus, and we can't grow anymore or learn anymore. So I do believe in the infinite growth mindset. But what? So your question was like, do I have bad days? I guess, right? Do I have days?
Yeah, like what keeps you motivated every day? I know for me, I'm all about achieving something like for working out. Like I can't, I'm like my own project. Like I create projects for myself. So what, and I'm like, okay, I'm just an endless project. I'm always going to work on myself. So when you get up in the morning, what are things that keep you motivated to continue to work on yourself? Not necessarily for work, although work bleeds into it because that is a big part of your life. So what do you do to just keep that fresh, ambitious kind of, I want to, achieve this, or what keeps you motivated? I guess what I'm trying to think about or understand is what strategies or things you say in your mind, or what keeps your brain activated so that you feel motivated on a daily basis. Because it's not easy to be motivated every day. I know I'm not.
No, I think that's where books and podcasts and hearing people speak, I do draw inspiration from other people. I mean, I was at an event last week and I heard other people speaking, and I saw someone actually brought their 10-year-old son into an environment, and I just saw the way they spoke with their son, and the whole fact they brought their son into an environment of adults. So it's all these little things that I look at and go, wow, that's aspirational, that's inspirational. Somebody is saying something and talking about something to be able to achieve, and I feel like, well, I want to do that too, or I want to try that too, or sometimes I just simply look at people and say, hey, based on the behavior they're modeling, I want to take a piece of that, and I want to be better, right? So maybe it's competition to some extent. Mm-hmm. I'm like, hey, that person's growing and I'm not, right? So, and I guess to somebody watching, they could say, well, that's an odd motivation, but I don't know. To me, if it's competition, it's a healthy competition, is I want to be like this person I work with, or I don't mean like them, like become who they are, but if I want to there's aspects of their character that I like, then I'm going to take a piece of that and say, okay, how can I use that to improve myself? If there's a book I'm reading or a podcast, how can I take what they're doing and use that in my own life? So that's what I mean by being like someone else, or using some of the things that they're sharing. So I think every day I look at every opportunity, and I've said this to other people many times. I look at every person that I'm associated with or paired with, work environments or academic environments, situations, both good and bad. I mean, not every relationship feels good. Not everything that goes on at our work feels good. But I look at those situations with open mind, and I say, well, what is my interaction with this person teaching me? what is this situation teaching me? What is this experience teaching me? So I think that's part of the motivation is I get up every day and I go, what experience am I going to have today that I can learn from? What interaction with a person am I going to have that I can learn from? So I think it's this curiosity maybe that motivates me then in a nutshell. I think that's kind of what I'm summarizing here.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what will this day bring? So I get up every day. I love this saying. I think it was somebody that led Goldman Sachs many years ago telling a group of salespeople in a brokerage that you've got to be prepared to wake up every day ready to bite the ass off a bear. So I've always loved that saying because I feel like to me it's aspirational, right? I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna attack this day, but it's not about beating the day or anything like that. In a win-lose type scenario, this is, I can't wait for this day because I can't wait for what I'm going to learn from somebody or something that is going to make me just a little bit better than I was the day before.
It's like a thirst for knowledge.
I think so. Yeah. So again, it goes back to curiosity. I know we talk about that a lot as it ties back to, internal family systems, but I think curiosity is something I'm always working on too. And that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
Unless you ask me a question about it, is that sometimes I just simply talk too much and I have to sit back and have reflective curiosity about things and just let other people talk. Especially if I have that thirst for knowledge, letting other people talk is what's going to fulfill it.
Right. So would you consider yourself super competitive?
I don't know because that to me, that's subjective to say super competitive. I wouldn't even know how to scale it.
Just competitive.
Well, I think I am to some extent. If I see...
So let me just add, so I'll put this better.
I mean, if I see somebody getting an award or getting recognition for one of my ideas, for example, I struggle with that a little bit, but I know, that's good. Somebody else is getting recognition, even if it was my idea, and they can, achieve that glory and it motivates them to continue to succeed. I have to let that go. But yeah, there is a little competitive spirit.
There's because I was thinking if you consider yourself competitive, do you think it helps or hinders you?
Well, I think the answer is both, right? It's not one thing or the other. It's situational, it's contextual. So I think there are times where competitiveness is good, right? If I see a really strong leader, somebody that's up on a stage speaking to people, or somebody that I work with, a strong leader and able to effectively convey ideas and bring people along with them, then my competitive spirit would say, okay, that's an area in which I need to do better in and need to improve upon. So seeing them do that successfully motivates me to work harder at it. So I think in a sense, there is a competitiveness. I also think, if I'm around a group of people and they're all talking and I feel like my ideas really need to get heard and I start talking over people, I think that may be driven by competitiveness, but then that becomes a net negative for me because then I don't show up well as having composure and collective. And also, I think sometimes I want to feel like at work, well, my department is the best. Anything that happens that could shift that narrative becomes disturbing to me and upsetting to me, and then I might get rattled, or I might rattle my employees. So that competitive nature too, wanting to be the best, is something that I definitely need to reflect on more.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit. How do you stay focused on things that you're not interested in, but you need to learn and pay attention to?
That's very challenging. I think it would be challenging for anyone, so I don't think I'm unique there. But sometimes I just grind it out. I don't think I have a secret formula for that. Unless you're seeing something, I
don't have a secret formula. The only thing that motivates me is not knowing something. I don't like not knowing stuff. And the more I learn, the more I realize I need to know more. So that's the only thing that keeps me in that place, but everybody's different. So I'm just curious. I know it's hard.
Yeah.
But you have such a vast knowledge of so many things and you're so smart. I'm just wondering, how do you learn things that you don't necessarily aren't motivated to learn? Or
I think it also comes down to, do I need to learn it? right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I come across things and I'm like, okay, well, I really don't need to know that. But I think your question is more about what do I do when I'm faced with something that isn't that interesting, but I need to learn it. So I think sometimes I just force myself to do it. And I might take quiet time. Like there are times like this weekend, I did something that really wasn't enjoyable, but I just set an hour aside because I knew I wouldn't get it done during the day if I was in the midst of somebody messaging me or getting distracted. So I think that particular situation, I have to just remove all distractions, do it when I have peace and quiet and mental clarity to be able to focus on something, because it does require more effort.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I ask is I know so many people struggle with that, and they'll just pass it by. They won't learn it, or they'll do something to make it seem like they learned it. Like they won't do it. Like they just procrastinate. I know I'm a big procrastinator when it comes to things like I'm not that interested in. I will procrastinate the shit out of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the reverse there. I'm almost like if there was a reverse procrastination, that would be me, because I've been told this before in my life, that my life is like a giant task list, to-do list, and I'm trying to check things off as quickly as possible. So I think somebody said to me a very long time ago when I was in my 20s, I was a manager in a retail store environment, and my boss at the time said, I was in another store, and the manager there, he didn't even have a to-do bin. This is back in the days when we didn't have computers. Everything was paper. So people would have like a little bin that said to do, and there'd be piles of papers in it. And he'd say, I go to this guy and say, where's all your stuff? Where's your to-do boxes? I don't have one, because I do everything as soon as it comes in, it gets done. And
that's impressive.
I always thought about that. I don't even know if the story was true, right? Because I don't even know who it was, or he just said it and I took it as gospel. But so then I always said, okay, well, and I was kind of this way before I heard that, but that competitive spirit, like, well, another manager's like that, I can be as good, if not better.
There's a competition piece, yeah.
So then I worked really hard to have things checked off and cleared off. But, sometimes if you do that, if that is your only motivation, you don't always take people along with you. And people are like, why is this an emergency, right? So then things become an emergency because I'm trying not to have an inbox. So I've got this is something I'm working on. I'm conscious of the motivation for it, but it is difficult.
Is it like compulsive?
Oh, there's definitely compulsions that I deal with all the time, that I have compulsion to speak or think about something. I know we talked about this recently in a group that we go to, and somebody made the comment, kind of adopt this internal dialogue of, why am I thinking or why am I speaking?
Right.
So I find that I have to do that more and more. But it's these little motors, right, running inside that say, everything has to be perfect, or everything has to be done quickly, or we have to get these things off our desk, so we can go home with a clear desk. That kind of motivates me too, is like, hey, what do I have to check off today? So I still kind of have that in the back of my mind. But not everybody, I'm not even sure even half the people work that way, right?
No, I mean, I know I love creating to-do lists, but I will create a to-do list, do all the things I want to do, and put arrows for the next day for the stuff I didn't do.
Yeah, see, for me to if I'm setting a to-do list for the day, and I do use lists in the phone and so forth, those are things that I know that I can do that in that one day, but then I also feel that I must do. So if something comes and derails that, I get anxious, and I'm going to find a way to get the other thing out of the way as quickly as possible so I can make sure I get everything done. So that's something I do struggle with internally, is being flexible around, okay, well, I plan to get these 8 things done. This big thing happened, but I still have to get, I need to finish this, or, so I do have some internal struggle around that.
Well, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, I rationalize it away until like it's due the next day. And I'm like, oh shit, I got, so I will rationalize it away. Like I keep just, I got time. Oh, I got time. Like, this is not an emergency. But then, I mean,
there are times where I might move something to it the next day.
Yeah.
And sometimes I didn't just get to it. So I don't want to imply that, hey, I'm up till 2 a.m. making sure I get everything done. No, I still have a regular bedtime. I have good healthy habits about eating and sleeping and things like that. So I don't let those things derail me to that extent that I become a zombie to get things done. So I do have some wiggle room in that. And it depends what it is I wanted to accomplish, right? There's some things I knew I need to get done on the weekend because if I leave it, it's not going to get done during the week because of my work schedule and exercise and everything else.
Yeah.
So, I do kind of prioritize, but I do, I mean, if I have said, okay, I'm going to go to work tomorrow, I'm going to get these things done. And all of a sudden somebody comes in and hey, you got time to chat. There are people that I work with that have tremendous amount of space for that. And that's something where I've learned to say, yes, how much, whatever, But then there's also the idea you have to create boundaries. You can't be just totally sometimes you just need to block time. And if you're at work, shut your door if you can, if you have an office like that. But you have to set boundaries. You can't be at everybody's beck and call too.
Right.
But you also don't want to be so rigid with, oh my God, I have to get these things done today, or I'm going to be completely anxious about it. That is not healthy either. And people will pick up on that.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And I'm glad you were able to answer that more, because that is something a lot of people struggle with. And I know I do too. And I was just curious, because I know how you typically work because I've been with you for 15 years, but sometimes I don't I don't know. I didn't know all that. So that was good to know. So I know you meditate. Mm-hmm. Do you think meditation has helped you in your daily life? If so, how do you think meditation has helped you on a functional level in your daily life compared to how you thought it should help?
I don't know that I had expectations about how meditation would help me. And I've been meditating for 8 years now. So I don't think there was ever a time where I said that this has to be the outcome from meditation. So I didn't personally have high expectations around it. Mm-hmm. In fact, I didn't understand it. If you go back 10, 12 years ago, when I was first introduced to the concept, I got stuck in this idea that you have to empty your mind. And so when I started meditating, I was like, well, I have to clear my mind of all thoughts. And so I've steadily come to learn that that's not what meditation is for. Meditation is allowing thoughts to come and go and accepting them and accepting the experiences that lead to thoughts or vice versa. I guess to some extent I just told you I didn't have any expectation, but then I told you I did. I just realized that. So I think, it was just kind of getting over this idea that hey, I can't stop the thoughts, and actually letting the thoughts come is actually easier to do than trying to, I can't think. I mean, who can do that? Nobody can sit there and say, I can't think. Also, I have to laugh because people that don't really understand meditation, I've heard them say, or I've seen it written that, well, if you empty your mind, then the devil's going to come in, that kind of thing. So again, for anybody watching, listening, meditation is not about opening the mind or emptying the mind. It is none of those things.
You can't empty your mind.
It's just sitting quietly with your thoughts. It's really all it is. I mean, it doesn't have to be a religious event or experience unless you want to make it that way. But, I can literally just close my eyes right here in the chair, and even for 5 minutes, just do nothing but sit quietly with my thoughts and let the thoughts come and go. And that's meditation. I mean, that's meditation. Now, if you want to get insightful, that insight meditation is the next piece, is where you look at your thoughts and say, what are they telling me? What are they teaching me? That's a whole other piece.
So why do you meditate?
Really just to kind of slow things down, because my mind does have a tendency to go very fast. I did have a therapist at one time told me about meditation. I didn't really look into it then, but she would say that meditation is like taking a brain shower. So if you think about, you bathe your body, to cleanse your body, then meditation is a way to kind of cleanse your mind. Although I don't know exactly if I think about it in that way, because again, we're not taking things out of the mind. But I think it is kind of, you think about bathing maybe as a way of de-stressing or calming also too, then I think that analogy makes sense, that when you meditate, whether you have your eyes open or fixed on something like some do, you are, I would think ideally, unless your thoughts aren't pleasant, you're coming to a more calm, peaceful state. And you're trying to, achieve some inner quiet and,
like be in the moment. I think.
Well, it is about being present.
Present,
Meditation is about being present. If you're letting your current thoughts come and go.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother thing too. We talked about, I think in the first podcast, how I used to live in two places. One was worrying about the future, and then dwelling and ruminating on the past and why something happened or why, so meditation, is just really about living in that one place in time, which is the present, which is the only place we can really live in, because past has happened. We can learn from it. Again, going back to the ideas, what can I learn from things? And then the future, if we're really focused on the present and stay in the present, then the future will come as a natural outcome of the present.
Right.
Rather than sitting here and just solely worried on that. So I do find, to your point, meditation helps me be more present and sit with my thoughts, but also lets me turn off distractions.
Which is really hard to do.
Well, I might, like let's say, I do like some sports, like I do like watching basketball or listening to baseball, for example. I might read. So I might read, have a baseball game on at the same time, and be checking my phone or putting to-do notes into my phone at the same time, right? So that's kind of a multitasking, right? I don't think really any of us were truly meant to do. So meditation then kind of takes me out of all of that, right? So in that moment, in the moments that I'm meditating, I'm only doing that one thing. I'm just sitting with my thoughts, and that's it.
Yeah. So, do you create new goals for yourself on a regular basis? And what are they?
Actually, I don't, and that's a great idea. One of the CEOs of our company, who's retired,
to-do list notwithstanding,
used to talk about having a business plan, a personal business plan, and I think I have them. I don't believe I'm writing them down, so there's benefit in writing it down.
Yeah.
When you and I first met, you introduced me to the concept of a vision board, which I had never heard of before. So I think there's benefit in writing things down and saying, okay, I'm very much a big believer in having a vision. In fact, at work, we have a strategic plan for the organization and for my team. And so we have a vision of where we want to go. And then we develop the plan and how we're going to get there. So I don't know. Maybe that's a good exercise you and I could do, because I don't think that I think we've talked a lot about things, but we've never really set a vision for where we want to go and then really clearly define how we're going to get there. And I think then once you've clearly defined how you're going to get there, you have to sit down and make your plan and work your plan, right? And then do checkpoints at some point and say, hey, are we advancing toward our plan? Are we on track? Or are we off track? And that's kind of what we do at work. But it's funny because I've said to my children, think carefully about who you pick as a partner in life, because you're really choosing a business partner, because life is like a business. But if I really think about it, I think in the 15 years we've been together, we haven't really sat down to do strategic planning for our life together. And maybe there's something
interesting.
In that. So it's just something I just thought of actually in this moment, in this podcast, as you're asking the question. But we're very good at operations, right? I think we could sit down and we can look at the budget and how much are we spending and what can we not spend, or what do we need to spend on, and how are we going to afford these things. And that's all great. But that's like going to work and just doing every day, but not having a plan for the business,
for the next
not anticipating changes. And I really never thought about it, because it goes into so many different levels.
Right.
I don't know. This is more than you bargained for in the question.
No, because I was going to say, I want to double click on this for a minute, but go ahead, because I think this is an important tangent.
But I know how to create a strategy. I know how to set a vision, but I've never done that really for my life.
Yeah. And that's so interesting, because that's all I ever do. Every day, at a minimum, every week, I have new goals for myself, for how I want to show up, how I want to present, what I want to do with my life right now, tomorrow, this afternoon. Like, I'm constantly going, okay, #goal. Remind myself to get an earlier start so that we can do this without someone else waking up and making noise in the kitchen.
Right.
I mean, just things like that. It's not a to-do list. It's actually a goal. And I'm always, and we talked about this in meditation group, I'm always striving for something. I'm a striver, and I, always like have these little projects that I want to achieve. So they're all goals for me, things that I want to do with my life every day, every week, every month, every year. And there's so many of them, but I know what they are, and I have a journal. I write it in my journal all the time, almost every day. And that's another goal, to journal every day. So, that's so interesting that you don't do that. I didn't know that about you. Cause you always talk about what like creating like a forecast for the future.
Right.
But you don't have goals for yourself. That's interesting.
Well, hold that, because I want to hold myself accountable. So
yeah.
Because I don't have pen and paper, but obviously you have all this down, and we can watch a podcast, but I think I want to go ahead and do this now. I feel motivated to do that because I realize something that I'm pretty good at work, I believe, and not doing my home life. But I think it's also something we need to do together, because to the point, if we're telling our children that being married to somebody and is like the business of life, then we're not going about the business of life like I would go about the business of business,
right?
Which is creating. I mean, I know we've talked about the vision board, but just saying, well, I want this in the future. That's not.
Yeah.
That's not concrete.
Yeah.
That's not a plan.
Yeah.
Is, anybody can have a vision. Like, I want to have a villa in the mountains in 10 years. Okay.
Well, vision is the goal. I mean, you make the goal, then you have the vision and you visualize it, but you also need, and naturally you will take steps to get there. Right. So I know in my head what I need to do to get my vision of the future and make it a reality. And so I take those steps every day. Maybe there are some days where things get in my way and I can't take a certain, the steps, but overall, like over time, I'm like sort of this on this linear path towards my goal, right? Not necessarily linear sometimes.
Well, I think that's true for it.
But
I don't think, there's no perfection around this. So you make a plan. I mean, your plan, you have to be prepared to pivot and make adjustments.
Right. And I look at it as projects. Like I'm a project for myself. Like I am my own project.
Right.
Right. So I want to make a way station for monarch butterflies. I'm making a butterfly garden. I'm going to register it. That's a project. It might take me a couple of years, but I'm on the way and I'm researching it, but that's like a side project. It's not really, but other things like this podcast and, creating Instagram, that's something that I want to do and do it well and do it every day. And I haven't started that yet. So that is a goal that I'm going to do, it's so just, our business,
well, there's that, right? If you think about the podcasting business, but there's also the business of our life.
Our business of our lives, my health.
Where do we see ourselves and how are we going to get there?
Yeah.
What steps are we going to need to take to get
right.
there?
So, I mean, health and fitness and well-being have always been my top priorities, like for myself.
Right.
Like our relationship is always a priority, but I think we kind of, it's not that we're on automatic pilot, but we check in all the time and we're always having conversations about how we relate to each other and what we want in life and about our kids. So just this podcast itself is a great opportunity to sit and
we definitely have communication. There's I don't think there's a communication issue, but I'm excited now to kind of think, and we can always bring this back to our audience at some point. But I think there's a real opportunity for us to sit down and make like a strategic plan for our family, right? Which is mostly you and I, because our kids are pretty much on their own. Well,
because I always talk about I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, and you're like, well, how are we going to get there? We don't. So rather than shut down,
I get very occupied with the how.
You do.
No doubt about it.
You do. But I mean, and the how is important. But I think the goal is to have that in sight, like keep that in your mind, in your mind's eye. This is where I want to be. And every day, what are you doing every day to make it happen? Right. So we're creating a podcast. Before this weekend is over, I will make an Instagram post on our business account. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to practice doing it over and over and over again until it's like nothing, right? Yeah. Until I'm like Dr. Becky every day.
If you make one you don't like, you just delete it.
Delete it, exactly.
Nothing is forever.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like, so I'm saying, like, I just need to do it, but in all the things I learn, I bring into my personal life. So I always think like, how can I, with this coaching class, how can I use this in my whole life, not just at work? This is for my whole life.
I think that's a great view, and I do tend to look at things because even some of the parenting books that we've been looking at, like the Parenting Map, which we talked about last week, and Dr. Kennedy's book. It's not good parenting, but
Good Inside. It's Good Inside.
Oh, Good Inside, right? So, but all these books I've looked at, they're not just about leading as parents, but leading as a leader, right? At work. So I've been able to take some of these concepts and use them at work. So it's great when you're able to make those connections. But going back to that, what I'm able to do at work, I haven't translated to that at home. And I don't know that I've really sat down with the kids or anything. So I think there's a good sidebar.
That's a great exercise to do.
Good takeaway here, because do you have a business plan, right, for your life, right? Do you have a plan for your life? So I think that's important. When I think about Bill, who was the CEO for us years ago, he's talked about, he had a plan and he had tasks. I think he did it in a spreadsheet, but I think that's very beneficial. And I know in my head some things, but I think when you have it written down, and also when you there's an accountability piece to it too, when you can say, okay, well, by 12/31/25, right, I will have done this, right? And you also have to lay out, I have to do these things in order to get there. But that's accountability, right? Because you don't want to be like 12/30/25, like I haven't taken anything in that direction. Well, you're not going to hit the target. But I think about the whole thing. A typical strategic plan is also, going to have what they call a SWOT analysis. You're going to look at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Who really is transparent enough to sit down and say, here's my strengths, here's my weaknesses, these are the opportunities I have, these are the things which are threats to me, right? So I think it's very interesting. So I'm going to be excited to do this and kind of sit down, maybe go through that exercise.
I don't know about a SWOT analysis, though. That's a little bit, over the top for me.
Well, you have to
but it's interesting because
what
I
are
do
your strengths and weaknesses,
well,
right?
Yeah.
Because if you say
I do that on my own,
right. But if my weakness is public speaking, I'm not going to go out and say I'm going to become the world's best public speaker. I mean, I know it's a very simple analogy,
but since my weakness is public speaking, I don't like to do it. I can have in my head a vision of myself doing that. And every time I say in my head, like, I am a great public speaker, feel how that feels in my body. Because typically when I say that, and usually when I make these statements or I write them down, I have a reaction in my body that is usually not good, because it's nothing I ever want to do because it doesn't feel good to me, because I will have a panic attack. It's like a huge thing that I've never been able to really accomplish public speaking skills. And as much as it's something I want to do, but at the same time, I have to accept where I am right now. So I put other things ahead of that priority because it's not a priority. I don't have to be a public speaker to be successful. I don't feel like I do. But then there are times when I think, well, if I could do this, if I could do a parent workshop in front of a bunch of parents and teach them the skills and knowledge to help their children with disabilities, then that would be wonderful. And I want to do stuff like that, but then I get in my own way. So that's the SWOT analysis, right? Like, how do I get there? Yeah. And I think, and one of the things I wrote down, because I did this on my own, I didn't even know it was called a SWOT analysis, but I wrote down, like, what are the things that made me successful in the past when I was speaking in front of people and I was successful and it felt good and it was easy. Preparation and visualizing in my mind the whole presentation from start to finish and my success in it made me successful. That's what made me, because I did do it. I did it in front of like 30 salesmen when I worked in a job for this, I think it was Whitco at the time. And I was successful because I prepared. I visualized it during my swim. I used to swim a lot back then. So I usually swam for 45 minutes. The whole swim, lap to lap, was me visualizing it. So I think that is a good way to do it, a SWOT analysis. I mean, I didn't realize I was doing that. And then, what would my weaknesses be and what would I do if I screwed up and what would I do, so I thought of all those scenarios. But that's interesting. We have to follow up on that.
100%.
All right. So what gifts do you think you bring to the world, to your work, and to your family?
What gifts? That's a tough question.
It is really hard.
Help me think a little bit about it. So tell me how
well,
you
so
how you
here's
would
the thing.
answer that.
I could think of at least 5 right off the top of my head.
Well, just give me one so I can, unless you want this to be your interview. But
No. Yeah. Well, I mean, because I know it's a hard one because when I thought about it, I thought right away, like I thought about the gifts that I feel like you have. And then I thought, I wonder how I would respond to this question. And I panicked because I can't think of any. So I was like, okay, I wonder if he knows how wonderful he really is.
Well, I think people will tell you that, I'm compassionate and caring. I'm not sure if I would classify it as a gift versus a personality.
But I don't want to know
quality.
what you think people would say. I mean, it's good to know what you think people would say, but I want to know how you feel about your own worth, like the gifts that you have that you bring to the world, to the.
I mean, obviously, a gift is to some extent, and I hate to say it like I have hubris about it, but intelligence, right? So I'm able to think.
There's nothing hubris about it. You are incredibly
quickly.
intelligent, and that is a
how
gift.
I use that, though. So I can't use it to lord over people or constantly correct people, which is something I'm always working on. But yeah, I mean, it can be a gift, but it can be a curse too. I guess is where I'm coming from.
So I would say that your correcting people has nothing to do with your level of intelligence and how smart you are. I think it's something that happened when you were a child that you weren't allowed to be wrong. So I think that you started correcting people because you were trying to show everyone, look, I am smart. I do have value. I don't think it's about your intelligence, but yeah, that is an incredible gift. You have a beautiful mind.
It is funny you would say that because there were a lot of times where if I did something wrong, I was told I had no common sense.
Right.
Or I was asked, are you an idiot? So, yeah. So, I mean, I kind of grew up reflecting and thinking, okay, hey, I have something to prove.
That's
here.
a trauma response. It's not an intelligence response. I mean, so yeah, I think that your intellect is an incredible gift to everybody all around you all the time. And you do bring a lot of value in that way. Can you think of any others?
Yeah, I don't sit around and think about how great I am. So it's not something I often reflect on. I mean, I think creatively I have a gift in writing. I'm able to write creatively and pretty quickly. I won my first award for writing when I was in the 3rd grade, for example. And when I was in high school, I received lots of accolades for my creative writing in that class. So same thing in college. I still have some of the papers I wrote that I received some very high marks on. But so yeah, I think that's another one. I think being insightful and being able to look at the people in a situation and kind of understand why something is happening or what somebody's telling me. I think also self-awareness. I think about high ability. I don't know if that's a gift, to be self-aware.
100%, it's a gift. There's a lot of people that are not.
It's a responsibility also because you can't be just totally self-aware and not do anything with that information that you gain from that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I struggle with people understanding that, yeah, I am aware of that, and I am working on that, and I am working to get better, and hoping that they see the change. So yeah, that's just a few things that come to mind. Did I miss any that were on your mind? Yeah,
so I think you have this huge capacity to love. You probably have one of the biggest hearts that I know of, other than next to my brother, who's got a huge heart. But, I think you have a tremendous capacity to love, and you do love, and you show people how you love. And I think that you're introspective, incredibly introspective, which is and you're humble. you're very humble, and you don't, you see, what you have, how smart you are, but you're not, like, always shoving it in people's face and look how smart I am. You're not, you kind of, even though you're like always 10 steps ahead of everybody. And when you're in the midst of talking or doing or working, you sometimes don't have the patience.
Right.
And you ask a lot of questions because, which can be frustrating, but it's also how your brain is working and your need to understand why something is or why somebody did something. So sometimes it comes across as like kind of annoying or like, why are you picking me apart or why? But I think it's just your desire to understand, and you're not doing it to kind of, and there might be a part of you that is doing it to sort of get an answer because you don't understand why, because you don't think it makes any sense to you. Like, why would you do that? Right. So, but I think that, you have, so mine were self-awareness, capacity to love, introspective, insightful, reflective, humble, creative writer.
Oh, for me.
Yeah.
Oh, so you already had some of the ones I told you.
You did. I did.
That's cool. So at least we're somewhat aligned.
Yeah. But I think that your level of intelligence is not your enemy. It's your friend.
Right.
And I think that you look at it like something that, is become an enemy for you. Like you fight, because you're so smart, but it kind of gets in your way. So being insightful and introspective helps with that. It kind of smooths that over a little bit. So that's my thought. But
very good.
That is a really hard question. I know.
It sure is.
So, but I think it's important because, especially for listeners who, so many, we're so quick to point out every single flaw we have, but who thinks about the gifts that we bring to the world and how we bring them, right? So
who is quick to pick out our flaws? I don't think we've had anyone do that to us.
I do. No, people are on their own. Like inside, like for me, like most people I know know more about what they don't like about themselves than they think about their own gifts that they bring to the world.
Gotcha.
So I think if we can turn that around, and instead of thinking about all the things you want to make better,
right,
which is what I do. Like, I need to do this better. I need to do that better. So I have a little reminder in my phone that every day I wake up, what motivates me is how am I presenting myself to the world today? How can I be in service of others? And how can I bring my gifts to them?
Yeah.
And that keeps me sort of in a place where, okay, I'm thinking about my gifts instead of the things that I don't like about myself, right? Which are endless, but but I do have gifts, and I've learned to realize what they are, because if you don't know what your gifts are, you can't bring them to the world and be in service of people with them.
No, that is a piece of self-awareness too.
Yeah.
Knowing what your gifts are as
That's
well.
huge. Yeah.
Yep.
So here's another big one. What are your fears?
My fear is not being valuable. Not coming to a situation, either at work or home, or my kids not doing enough, not being enough. Am I doing enough for my children today, even though they're young adults? Am I doing enough at work? Am I doing enough in a relationship to make everything successful in the work? So I do think sometimes I'm in overdrive on that notion that I've got to work harder than everyone else to be successful. Like, things don't come easy for me, so I've got to work even harder. And I think, to what you said earlier about traumas, I think some of that earlier trauma where, I was really poor and lived in a lot of very poor situations, and living with my mother and having people come in and out that were a little sketchy and living in sketchy places. And I just felt like, okay, I had to work really hard to get out of that environment. I almost have a fear of like ending back up in that environment, right? And so doing everything I can to make sure it doesn't happen. Also, too, I think, that becomes a kryptonite in a way, because I'm working so hard to not have something instead of just working toward something that, you have to be careful with that mentality.
That's
I
a
think that's
perspective.
big fear. You know, I used to tell people, when people ask me that question, I haven't done that in a while. When I was younger, people would ask me that question. I said my fear would be being homeless, that I would have no job, no place to live, and no worth, no value, and I'd be out living in a box somewhere. So that was a real fear, and I still like. There's days I tell myself a story that somebody's going to find a way to lay me off or.
Do you think it still is a real fear?
A little bit, yeah.
I think it is because I know your eyes just dilated.
Okay. I don't have a mirror in front of me to see that. So thank you for sharing
I can
that,
see your eyes dilate because you definitely are feeling some kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, I fear sometimes that like everything could just collapse any moment, and But as a child, I might have the rug pulled out for me constantly. I'll never forget. I think I was 14, and my mother and sister and I had just moved into a house. It would look like it was going to fall over. It had holes on the exterior wall. We had to put plastic on. We had to put plastic in the windows to keep the cold out. I had to chop wood for the wood stove because we couldn't afford the oil, and when I think about that, I do think. I remember at the time that when we were living there, she came home. We were on welfare at the time, and food stamps. And she came in and said, "We have to move." I think we'd been there a few weeks, and she said, "We have to move. Welfare doesn't like the place we're living in, so pack your stuff up." Now we must have been there 2 or 3 weeks, and she's like telling us to, And at the time, I'm 14. My sister's not 9, and she's telling us we got to pack up, or we're gonna have to move again, like within a few days. So my life was a lot like that. Living with my mother, it was very chaotic. I did live with my father a couple times. I went back and forth. And if anybody's interested, I did write a book about all this. It's called The Everything Kid. It is out there on Amazon. I didn't make the podcast about self-promotion, but there is a book which for some I know has been hard to read because it really does talk about the story of my earlier life, what I went through, and how I found the resources and the supports to kind of get myself out of that life. But unfortunately, sometimes you can take yourself out of your old way of life, but you may not take the old way of life out of your head, out of yourself. So
100%.
I think to some extent,
so
sometimes my mind
I think
is
you need
still
to say
stuck
that
there
again.
in that chaos.
You need to say that again. Sometimes you can take yourself out of your old life, but you could never take your old life out of yourself.
Yeah, and so I think
that's important
the struggle.
to remember.
I'm not necessarily living. Yeah. We are not nowhere near living like I was at that time. And I can't tell you how many times I moved. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I've moved at least 45 times in my life.
Yeah.
Some of that was my parents. Some of that were the jobs. I worked in store retailing for a while and accepted transfers. I didn't have kids at the time. So I've moved a lot less in the last 20 years that I've had kids than I did before that. But, there were times we didn't even stay in one place for more than 6 months. So, it was just this idea that we were constantly on the go, and there was always a situation. And my mother was very dramatic, would come in and like, it's the end of the world. Everything was the end of the world. So I think I've kind of adopted that, and that's something I have to be hyper aware of, because sometimes I dysregulate people just because I get this like, oh my God, this is it's like an emergency, super critical, because my mother was always like, everything's on edge, it's an emergency. And so I kind of had a hard time shaking that, but I'm very aware. I can tell everybody, and people I work with know this very well, and I know you know this, that I'm very self-aware, but I'm not always able to, in a moment, correct or self-adjust or regulate my behavior, my actions, my thoughts, my words in the moment, because this peace inside of me is so pervasive. I'm very aware of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do a better job. Sometimes in the moment now I know, I should have said that. I mean, I found myself apologizing to somebody a week ago because I said something and I regretted it. And I didn't really know them, and I didn't have their phone number. And so I sent an email.
So you're human.
But at least I realized it. And of course the person came back and said, I didn't take it the way you think I did. And so there was no need to apologize. But I needed that clarity for myself, because I felt, if I was on the other side of that, I wouldn't have liked how that felt. Again, I always love that quote by Maya Angelou.
A gift.
It is not, right? Now, I don't remember the quote word for word. I used to. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on it, but it's really not what we say. It's how we make people feel, right?
Right. People will not remember what you said. They will
Right.
always remember how you made them feel.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something I try and always have in the back of my mind. Like, how
Right.
would I feel having this said to me or somebody acting that way? So I do find, again, going back to why am I thinking, why am I talking, do need to take a pause sometimes and go, what is the essence of this thought that I'm having, or the essence of what I'm about to say? Why am I saying it? Am I saying it because I'm living back in those chaotic days of my teenage years?
It's so hard to, though, be reasonable with yourself when you get hijacked by your emotional brain.
Yeah.
Because in the prefrontal cortex, this part shuts down, right? And now you're just working off your amygdala, and it doesn't have any reason.
Yeah. Well, I
So
was
it's just
in
emotional.
most of my childhood, well into my 20s, I was in survival mode almost every day.
So that's how you cope with your fears based.
How do I survive?
Yeah, that's how you cope with your fears. Though, because the next question was, how
So
do you
my fear
cope
is
with
not
them?
surviving, right? I think at the end of the day, in essence, right?
Yeah.
Because I was in survival mode all that time, I was in fear of not surviving.
Well, it sounds like your fear was not. It now is not. You're not enough. Am I enough? Am I enough? And I would say you are.
Right.
Are you enough? You are enough.
And I need to get past that, right? Because what we all want to do is we want to focus on thriving,
Right.
not surviving.
Not surviving. Right.
Businesses are not in business to survive; they're there to thrive, right? Because survive sounds like, hey, I'm just hanging in there, getting by, right? I always love when you call somebody up, like, how you doing? I'm hanging in there. I'm just getting by. I'm like, I don't ever want to be in that mindset. That
That's why I typically, how are you doing? Living the dream. I'm living the dream. Because I am. I mean,
well, that sounds cynical the way you said it.
no,
that
but I
sounds
mean,
sarcastic.
it does sound sarcastic because I'm coming off of the other person saying, hanging in there.
Yeah, usually when somebody's living the dream, it's usually a little touch of sarcasm.
Well, maybe a little bit of sarcasm, but I'm actually being honest. I'm really, things are great. And even when I say things are great, the other response is, "Oh yeah, great, fine." Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah.
If I know
But they
somebody
are.
really well, say, we're having a few challenges right now, but I will tell you that,
I'm the happiest I've ever been.
we are
Yeah.
moving through them successfully because of who we are, and like you and I, the relationship that we have. So I mean, we've had a lot of extreme challenges. And I'm not going to sit here and say, my God, my life is more challenging than anybody's, because there's no
can't
competition
quantify,
there, and it's all relevant.
Yeah.
So, but I feel for me personally, my whole life has been challenging. Those challenges are still here today. There's some really tough things that our kids are going through right now. So
Right.
That even though they're young adults, doesn't mean we get to walk away and say you're on your own. So I don't,
Yeah.
but getting to a point where you feel like the walls are closing in, that's not helpful. And that's not going to help you deal with anything.
No, yeah, things are really challenging, and but I don't really. While things are challenging, I mean, there's so many people out there facing far greater challenges.
Yeah, and that's always
And
helpful
so,
too to look at. I mean,
yeah, I
obviously,
mean, I
we live
don't-
in the Carolinas, so and the people west of here, 2 to 3 hours west of here, are Western Carolinas, Eastern Tennessee, northeastern Georgia, northwestern South Carolina, right? So all those areas,
Yeah, it's really hard hit right now.
are really dealing with quite a bit. And as a leader in a financial services business, I'm looking at, hey, how do we potentially develop programs to help these people? So I'm always trying to think about, what can I do in my capacity, in my role, to improve the lives of others who may be going through a difficult situation. So, so we're speaking about challenges here on this date that we're recording this, October 6, 2024. Really want to be mindful of the people that may have lost their homes, their lives, their
Family,
sources of income, their food, their fresh water, all those things that they're dealing with. And if you can donate in any way to those people financially or materially, please do. We should definitely pay forward any gifts that we have to others. I strongly believe that. And here as we speak, we've got another hurricane that's potentially going to hit Florida in the middle of this week. So there's a lot going on. But I try not to sit here and go, well, my life's not so bad because I'm not going through a hurricane. I don't necessarily take that perspective, but I try not to feel like my challenges are worse than anybody. That's not.
No, I mean, we have challenges. Our
It's not a
children,
game.
have challenges, but we're doing the best that we can to support them the best way we know how.
Right.
And so, we can't really talk about them because they're young adults and it's not our story to tell, but just like any parent who loves their child, it's very hard to see them struggle and go through really
and how we're
challenging
supporting
times,
them is our story to tell,
Right.
without naming names or
Right.
anything like that, or naming the situation. But we do. Not only do we have to get up every day and think about how do we be the best version of ourselves, but also how do we support our children on that effort and journey as well.
Well, yeah, and I think the way we support our children is to make sure, or to look at how we can be the best version of ourselves. Because if we're the best versions of ourselves, then we can absolutely be able to support our children. Self-care is first. You have to take care of yourself. Otherwise, you can't take care of anybody else.
We have to take care of ourselves because
Yeah.
you can't be useful to anyone in service to others if you're not well yourself, right?
Not right headspace or physically well and so forth.
But, but second to that, I think, is modeling that too. What does self-care look like? What does self-compassion look like? All those things, right? Modeling that behavior for your children so they can see success isn't defined by how much money you make, right? But it's the things you take in, right? The things you ingest. What do you read? What do you watch? What do you do that your children pick up on?
Absolutely. And that's a big thing. It's so interesting because that's a new question I ask all of my families. So, when I go in and talk to them and they tell me about their child and the challenges that they're having and their concerns and their fears and everything, the last thing I ask them is, what is your self-care routine? What do you do for yourselves to take care of yourself so that you're in the right headspace to do the best for your child? And usually I get a confused and shocked look.
What? I don't
like
have time for
what?
me.
They're like, what are you talking about? I said, you don't put yourself on a shelf for your child because you can't take care of your child if you're on a shelf. You have to be present in the moment and healthy and in the right headspace to make sure that your child's getting what they need.
I don't think you always subscribe to that notion, but
I have more though lately. Yeah. Like I tend to put, I don't, you're right. I haven't always subscribed. And usually when if my child is going through something really challenging, I forget about myself for a little bit, but it hasn't really been, I'm better with it now. Like now, especially if something challenging is happening, I will carve the time out to meditate, to exercise, to bring them into nature to walk. I mean, so that we're both getting the benefit, things like that. So what I do for self-care, I'll bring them into it. And that
funny,
helps.
Right? I think we've seen this in many podcasts, the analogy about, the plane, the oxygen mask drop down.
Right.
Make sure you put your own oxygen mask on first.
Because if you pass out from lack of oxygen, you're not going to be able to help your kid.
Yeah. So it's kind of true about a lot of things too. And,
so I want to wrap this up.
Yep.
So I'm going to wrap this up on a really great note.
I'm ready.
So what does your perfect day look like? But let me walk you through it.
Okay.
Because it's very vague. So what does your perfect day look like? From the moment you wake up to the end of the day, what are the details? So when you wake up, what do you see? What do you smell? What do you feel? What does your room look like? Your bathroom? What do you look like when you look in the mirror? Who is with you? Where do you live? What do you do? Where do you go? What car are you driving? What are you eating for dinner and with whom? And how does your day end? Now, after saying all that, I don't want you to force it. I want you to just let it come to you. Whatever comes to you is what your day is going to be. So you're not going to try to think about your perfect day. Your perfect day is going to come to you. And this is adopted from Martha Beck's, one of her books that she writes. I forget which one it is. What is your perfect day?
Okay.
So it's a great exercise.
That's a lot to unpack, but it feels like what you asked me, if I heard you correctly, is just from start to finish, walk me through the day. It almost feels like in order of operations.
And use your five senses to do it.
Yeah. I mean, certainly waking up either with the alarm or without the alarm. The first thing I'm seeing is probably if the sun has already started to rise outside, I'll see a little glint of sunshine coming between the curtains and the wall. So if I don't see the clock first, I know that it is already morning. So that's kind of the first thing I see when I open my eyes. I may turn to look at you and see you sleeping and may see a little tuft of hair above the blanket. And Other than that, the room's pretty dark. So I usually pick up my phone. So at least I have the glow of the phone to help me navigate around the bed so I don't bang my knee into the corner of the bed.
Well, so this is more what your perfect day looks like.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not actually a day in your life. It's what is your perfect day.
Okay.
So it could be anything. You could be living on the ocean. You could be in the mountains. You could be, in
I'm
Bali.
sorry. Yeah, I was because, like I said, it was a lot to unpack, and I thought what you were doing is like asking me to walk you through like my day from start to finish.
Don't walk me through your day. I want you to think about what your perfect day is, and what that looks like, and let it just come to you. Like, imagine waking up to what would your perfect day look like?
Well, in a perfect scenario, I'm on the ocean, right? That's always going to be, for me, the essence of a perfect day. So where I am is so important, right? So if I'm on the ocean and I've got a patio door just open up, Hawaii is a great place to do this because you don't have all the humidity we have here in the South, and you can have a breeze coming through. So having a breeze, smelling the salt air, smelling the ocean, smelling coffee brewing on a pot in the kitchen, and hearing waves crashing on a beach, and hearing the coffee percolating at the same time, seeing the sunrise on the beach with my coffee, all those things. So
close your eyes. And now, what does your room, your bathroom look like? So I'll go through each thing. So so when you wake up, that sounds great. So I got what you see, what you smell, and you feel. What does your room look like? You have patio doors. What does your bathroom look like? What does yourself look like? So now you're up. Imagine your perfect.
I have to keep my eyes closed.
Well, it's usually easier to imagine it going through your head because your eyes are awake, so you're not really kind of picturing it.
I'm not really an interior decorator, so asking me what my bathroom looks like is kind of feels odd.
Well, what bathroom? What kind of bathroom do you want to walk into?
Well,
do you have glass showers? Do you have what's in there?
Definitely a glass shower and a big shower head with like a waterfall type thing coming out of it, and nice tile all the way around. Nice like brownish, tannish, grayish tile all the way around. Big mirrors, nice focus lights. Lights I can be able to look at my face up closely if I miss cutting a hair somewhere or something. And nice big sink or double sink, right? So I can do something in the bathroom without you complaining that I'm in your way or taking too long. Is that good enough?
Yeah, that's great.
Maybe a sauna in there too. I would take a sauna now if we're creating a wish list. Yeah, sauna in there would be helpful as well.
Well, it's what your bathroom looks like, right? Well, I mean, this is just part of the...
Nobody's asking what my perfect bathroom would look like.
Well, that's an important thing because you spend a lot of time there, right? I mean, I never thought about it before I did the exercise myself.
Actually, I don't like to. I like to be in and out no matter what I'm doing in the bathroom. I try to be quick about it, actually.
That's true.
So I think you're looking at it from your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like to spend a lot of time in the bathroom, but I do enjoy, a nice hot shower or, I mean, I don't typically take a bath, but if I had a big bathtub where I could, I probably would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's jets in there as a hot tub because I have a lot of lower back pain, shoulder pain, things like that. Yeah, that would be cool too. So who is with you? Where do you live? What do you do? Where do you go? What kind of car are you driving? Well, you're definitely with me. I guess, where do I live? I like the idea of Hawaii, being on the Big Island, but I could also take Folly Beach, right off the coast of South Carolina also, as long as I have a house that's on the beach with those breezes. Yeah, it was super hot and humid down there when we went. That's the only thing I didn't like. I mean, if we had a place that had air conditioning, but then in the wintertime, you could have the door open for sure. Yeah. It's like, it goes down to 50 at night. You would love that. I'd be freezing. But so you said, who was I with, and what was the second part? So we know where you live. What do you do? What are you doing? Well, what's your perfect career job? In my mind, this may be retirement at this point. And no, now. Well, yeah, if I had, or a year from now, some point in the future. I mean, I would love to. It would be great to be able to earn a living from writing books, whether nonfiction or fiction. I've done both, but. I always wanted to, it's funny because people say, what do you do? And you say, well, this is what I'm doing right now for a living. But I am a writer because I have written many different things. I've started several books. I published one. So I guess I am a writer. I don't need to say, well, I would be a writer because I am a writer. I've done it. And I am doing it still. So I would be a writer. For me, part of the day might be going out for walks or a little swim or hike, but I would set aside time for writing also, but watching the sunset, watching the sunrise, being outside. The ideal situation would have that laptop out on a table out on that deck overlooking the ocean with the breezes and writing from there in that space. So yeah, I do picture that. I do picture that a lot. I have always thought about that. And fun fact is the number one song when I was born was Paperback Writer. So kind of feels like it was meant to be also.
That's so funny. That's right. You've told me that before. Yeah, I when I did this exercise the first time I do it often because I like to keep my eye on that ball. Like,
right.
So, but I do wake up also on the ocean, with a multi-story home where we have, open views to the ocean and a deck off of our bedroom with doors that are open to the ocean. We also have a large, I walk in the bathroom, and it's really walking into the bathroom and looking at yourself. What do you see? Who do you see? What do you look like? That was a part that I was like, what am I looking at? What do I want to look like? Obviously, I want to look like myself.
Right.
But, a much stronger, healthier, fitter version of myself.
Well, that's all subjective, right?
It is subjective. Well, subjective to me.
Healthy isn't always about what you look like.
Right. Well, to me it is because
how you are on the inside.
How am I on the inside? But it also is about what my body looks like. And, I don't care about aging. I'm not really too worried about the aging factor, but I want to be healthy and I want to be strong and I want to be fit. And that's important to me. So that's a goal. Like that's what I work on right now. So
the book Atomic Habits would change that from wanting to be fit, saying I am fit, because then you do things in alignment with how you see yourself.
Correct. And that's exactly what I do every day is I think in my head what I am.
Right.
And that is what I am. I am fit. I am strong. I am healthy. I'm in excellent health.
Right.
So I know these things to be true for myself right now.
You say, I'm trying to be healthy, but right now I really need that pizza.
No,
right.
Versus
I am healthy, and now that.
Well, I think you have to live too. I think you have to make room for things like pizza, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, as long as I meet my protein goals, I'm good. Right.
Sure.
But so I did the same thing, and we are in alignment. And I'm going to wrap it up because I want to, but I wanted to know what your perfect day was and how ours aligned, and I did. My perfect day was we would get up in the morning, we had coffee on our terrace overlooking a beautiful ocean view. I'm not sure where that is, maybe west coast of Florida. I don't know, wherever that, it doesn't matter. It's just a beautiful ocean view. And so we had a separate structure on our property for our studio podcast.
Okay.
You were writing.
Yeah.
You were a writer. Finn was with us, and he had his own business in his own little cabin also on another part of our property. And they were doing their thing and whatever that was, I can't remember. I wrote it down. But yeah, it was very much aligned, with, and we drove into the village. So it did very much look like the downtown Folly Beach area.
Yeah.
It was so quaint and pretty.
Good alignment of vision.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So so it was just interesting how we aligned in that way. And
yeah, it is.
I had worked with children and families and teen groups. So I had that business going. So, but it was in another home in town, and I had staff that worked.
That's very specific.
Yeah. So I had toddler groups and teen groups, and I had staff that handled those activities with them. And I would go in and meet with parents if they wanted to meet with me, and kind of facilitate the teen groups and get them set up. And so, yeah, because that's something I've always wanted to do for teens neurodiverse community.
I love it.
Yeah. So, and that was like my perfect day. And of course we ended it having, a delicious dinner of fish and I don't know, something else at night. And and we had a Jeep and a
Oh yeah, you asked me about the car. I forgot to.
We
mention
had a
that.
Jeep.
We have a Jeep now, so I guess that would.
yeah, no,
that would
but
ring true.
like a regular Wrangler Jeep
Oh, okay.
with that the top came down.
I know one of our kids would really love that.
Yeah, and we drove around a lot in a golf cart.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for ending on that note. I don't know what you wanted. Do you want to just tell anybody who was watching what the purpose of all this was?
So the purpose of this was to ask a lot of questions about, better get to know my husband, because even though I know him for 15 years, there are still I didn't know you didn't have goals and your fears. So I wasn't really sure what they were. And I didn't realize you had a fear of whether or not you're enough. So that was, and I love that you were so transparent. So I really appreciate it. And I'm very grateful for your ability to be vulnerable and transparent. That's huge. And also another gift.
Yeah.
So, I didn't realize the gift question was going to stump you, but I wanted to present this opportunity to our viewers because I think it's something that everybody can do at home with their kids, with their spouse, because it's kind of fun. And you can get to know your kids. So let's say you want to do an interview for your own kids. It doesn't matter how old they were. It's fun. And it's a fun activity.
And it tells you a lot.
And it does tell you a lot. And, if someone doesn't want to answer a question, then they could pass. I mean, nobody's obligated to do that. But it's just fun to think about questions that you want to know that you don't typically get to talk about or ask.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these things I didn't really know the answer to. I mean, I know what I think your gifts are, but you don't know. Right? I mean, that's why I wanted to bring it. It was a fun activity, and you could do it with friends, anybody you're in a relationship with. And I think it really kind of focuses back on our main goal of this podcast was to talk about relationships and how relationships are really an integral part of being human in our lives. I mean, that's what being human is, to being in relationship with everything around you, people, things, everything.
Yep, 100%. Fantastic. Well, I think one of these days I'll interview you. Probably not the next episode, but I think that ultimately, I don't know that we sketch out next week, but maybe we should return to talking about something related to parenting. Yeah.
Maybe we'll double click more on the goals thing. Creating goals for yourself as a parent, looking at your family sort of as a business. And I don't mean that in like a cold sort of sense,
we can expand on that a little bit.
But to teach your children how to plan for their own futures.
Yeah.
And how to set goals for themselves personally, for every day, for 5 years from now, where do you see yourself? I mean, those are good questions.
Right. And then, so that's strategy. And then also, what are the tactics?
And it can start with an interview.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to talk about them. Interviews are fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching us this week, and we would love to see you back for the next episode. So stay tuned. Have a great week. Thank you.